Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Dreamscapes. Since childhood, most of my dreams happen in the exact same place, more specifically, a city. It's very rich in details, and it has its very own aura. The dreams take place either early at gray mornings or late at night, which makes the city very dark. The place is enormous and full of people who exist only there. I even know some of them, and we take buses or walk together. It's almost as if I've been leading a second oniric life in that place. I have full awareness that I'm dreaming, being able to return whenever I want. I have a very clear image of how the city looks, and the most interesting characteristic about it is the fact that the whole thing grew around an enormous graveyard, with statues made of pure gold. So I call that city cemetery, since I'm not very creative. I started to see that place gradually. It began when I was around 4 years old, and it freaked me out during my whole childhood. Nowadays, even though the city is much more detailed, it doesn't scare me anymore, but makes me quite uneasy since it is so vivid. Does anyone else have this kind of onirical experience? If my dreamscapes are of interest, I can provide more details about it, as well as some simple maps in order to give a better understanding of how that city is organized. Also, if anyone has an idea of what it could be, answers are welcome. I can't find an explanation for such detailed dreams, and so far I'm the only one, compared to people I know, that experiences this kind of stuff.
What are some of your most common dreamscapes? One of mine is a largish mall. The main area is a circle with a food court. It's a fairly normal mall, but some aspects of it make it seem a bit luxury. I can't really explain what I mean by that, though. I suppose it has some nice tiling and some nice bits hanging from the ceiling. Oftentimes this main area will morph or change between dreams, so the real common dreamscape for me is a different area of the mall, a section that juts out from the circle. It has a room where music is played on a piano, never visited, only heard church-type music coming from that area, bathrooms, a store for clothes, and a somewhat empty basement. I say somewhat empty because it appears to have had stores at one point, but they are closed now. The ground-level floor still has active shops, but there are definitely some closed ones as well in this area. This outcropping of the mall seems to be much older than the rest and heavily features wooden architecture, kind of similar to what you'd see in an outdoorsy store. I believe there is also a restaurant at the tail end of this area, but I don't usually go that way too often.
Why is it the mall? I've had this dream so many times. It's endless, and you never actually get where you are going, and there's always so many floors. The weirdest part about the dream is that it never really has any theme. It always feels like I know why I'm there, and so does everybody else that's there, which is so bizarre. Sometimes it's empty, but I swear it always feels like it's closed.
After you wake up from a dream, try to remember the plot and locations of it. I feel this helps solidify them. Mine is always the Circle Mall, and it always has this older outcropping. Sometimes it has an entrance area with escalators leading to a second floor with two distinct areas, the exterior of a dollar store-looking shop and a Best Buy or Sears-looking open-floor shop. I can remember browsing the video games there a few times.
I have this dream where I am still in high school and another one where I'm still in college. I never have dreams I'm in my current life. Maybe it's a sort of a dreaming tendency to explore places that you can, for example, methodically picture in your head while you are awake. Something that comes to mind are imagery that you could either remember or sustain enough to completely imagine, like endless malls or an old school, or something banal like an endless golf course. Maybe it's an unfortunate reflection of awake life, and ironically interesting that with all the crazy things that can happen in dreams, it's this type of stuff that is the most confounding.
I entered into a large conference hall or gambling hall, but only betting for horse races. I could tell I was not from this timeline, yet I brought my brother and best friend who seemed to understand completely. There I met younger versions of my father and his brother, my late uncle, both wearing seemingly futuristic yet still retro glasses. I claimed that I wasn't supposed to be here, but both my brother and my best friend reassured me everything was all good. On the ceilings were these large IKEA-like horses with jockeys on top. They appeared to be suspended by nothing, and I was told we are here to gamble. On what? I don't know. The horses and jockeys were just for decoration, apparently. I went outside and all I saw was flowing grass and hills with no other buildings near. I then began to question the people in my dream, where we are and at what time. My father chuckled and directed me to speak with my deceased uncle. He led me to an area of the conference room I had not seen that had a cooler full of soda drinks, and then asked me to look to my left. There I saw all of these candies I had not thought about since I was a child. I was very confused. I went back to the group tables and couches and asked everyone what was going on. Someone explained to me that I was actually time traveling through different universes, and that what I saw was accurate. I asked what year we were in, but I'm not sure I can recall exactly what they said. It was definitely earlier than 2021. I began questioning everything. How do your children entertain themselves? We use streaming services where I'm from, and they chuckled and said, yes, we've had that for years and years. I remember asking about the phones, and the same answer. I also noticed my uncle and dad were very inquisitive about my appearance.
I've had some dreams throughout my lifetime which seem to stick in my memory as significant for some reason, but I cannot decode their symbolism in some of them. I had one dream when I was still very young, and its abstract blob slowly merging and separating. Yet even the thought of it today gives me a feeling of dread. This was a recurring dream until I was about 12 years old. The next dream was when I was 2 or 3 years old. It was a common chase dream and the first fully immersive dream I remember. At the end of the dream, I rounded the corner to find important adults in my life sitting quietly in a room, and they blamed me for being chased. This seems to have been a precognition of the rest of my life. Another dream was when I was a teen or preteen. I was going to the end of the long hallway at home, at the end of which was my bedroom door on the left. The hallway dead-ended at the wall to the bathroom, door on the right. Instead of the wall, there was an ornate statue of the Virgin Mary atop a fountain, all surrounded by fragrant flowers. I touched the fountain, and it opened like a door. I passed through into a garden. Some other dream was in black and white. I was walking with my mom and sister trying to warn them of a hurricane. The weather was getting worse, and they kept interrupting me, and my voice became weaker until I could not speak, and eventually could not breathe. I writhed in a ditch trying not to die. Yet another such dream happened when I was an adult. I was in an unfamiliar city, on foot. A girl on a bicycle approached, and her dog jumped off the back of the seat. She said a storm was coming. I looked to the horizon and saw black billowing clouds with red lightning. These are but a few. Does anyone else have dreams which seem to persist in their memories as somehow significant to their lives?
Terrible drawing, but this one is hard to describe. It's a scene where two cities are separated by a small little piece of land hovering above nothing. Enter from the left side in a car and go to the right. The right side has a little road that goes up the mountain. Weirdly enough, this is the most common way I've seen this dream, but I'm fairly certain I can remember being on the right side going up the mountain. I've seen this one in road trip dreams or dreams where I'm in a car going somewhere.
My favorite ones that I thought were so interesting, I had to write them down to remind myself what I experienced were a glass factory environment with lots of clear pipes and clockwork kind of machines. It was like a greenhouse. Everything was white, glass or copper, and it was bathed in sunlight with rays coming from the roof. It was extremely peaceful and serene and stretched on for miles and miles. I could have sworn I've had this dream more than once, but it might be déjà vu. The second one was like this weird temple, kind of like the Angkor Wat or Izalith in Dark Souls, but much darker coloured rock. The sky was permanently sunset, and lots of pillars rising into the sky that cast massive shadows in the blood-red sky. I think in the dream I was doing some kind of ritual. The third one I don't know how to describe very well. Kind of like yours, but surrounded by water. There were lots of landscapes kind of like the Windows XP meadows, but connected by these thin land roads surrounded by water, and some of the parts were sandy. A lot of these areas had like energy shields that blocked my passage like it was a video game, and the tides would rise and engulf parts of the land. In the dream, I was traveling aimlessly and couldn't retrace my steps because the water rose where I had come from or the energy shield stopped me. But I didn't seem to mind and just stayed in a spot that I liked.
I've had a lot, but the most notable are 1. Basically Los Santos, except I'm usually jumping across rooftops. I don't know why I get this dream as often as I do. 2. A school with strange hallways and classrooms. The main atrium is black and gold with 2 big staircases. It's very gaudy, more like a fancy hotel more than a school. There are hallways that are an off-cream white, dimly lit with basic cream white paint and pipes on the ceilings. They lead nowhere in particular most of the time, and I just end up in the atrium again. There's sort of a science room behind a divider at the top of the stairs. It is usually dark and filled with strange specimens of creatures that both exist and look made up, mostly aquatic, dimly lit with aquarium lights. There's a hall that loops around back that has a huge difference in ceiling height all the way around. Last time I was there, I found a big pool room with a thin, opaque ceiling that lets natural light through. I was actually walking on a sky path system above the pools, kind of like something you'd find in an industrial building to access stuff near the ceiling for maintenance. I'm never a student there, though. It's usually after hours and very sparsely populated.
Hello/X/. I don't come here often, but I had a very unsettling dream last night, and I need guidance. It seemed so real. On top of that, lately over the past year or so, I've had vague impressions of episodic dreams. In other words, when I'm in a dream, I seem to remember other dreams from that same dreamscape, if that makes sense. My dream last night was particularly unsettling. I was being arrested and had a trial coming up for a murder I committed in the dream. In last night's dream, I was kicking a skeleton, but I vaguely remember a previous dream from the same place where I killed someone in the dream. It was like some kid sitting on his porch or something, and I just punched and kicked him until he died. Then I ran off, hoping no one would find out, even though I did nothing to hide the body. In last night's dream, I was looking at 30 years in prison. I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. Then I woke up. It just freaked me out. I'm starting to think that dreams might be a transmission of my consciousness into a parallel universe, at least some of the time. Sometimes dreams are clearly influenced by something I watched before bed, but other times they are just bizarre and don't seem to be related to my real life in any way. I've also had lucid dreams where I have killed people, because at the time I thought dreams were just figments of my imagination. Now, I don't know. I worry that I'll be punished for my actions in the dream world when I die. What if it means my soul isn't pure, because I still do impure things while dreaming? I'm just rambling, but it has me a bit concerned. Has this board ever reached a consensus on dreams?
Have you done something recently for which you feel guilty? You seem to be concerned that you'll be judged and punished for something.
Not something I feel very guilty for. I recently moved away from my hometown for a job a few hours away. I feel guilty for being far from my parents now that they are older. I feel like they need my help with stuff, even though they won't admit it. And now, I only see them maybe one weekend a month or so. They've been very supportive of my move, but internally I feel bad. A lot of it has to do with the fact that one of my parents was in the hospital a few years ago. They're mostly better now, but will never be totally normal. So yeah, I feel guilty for moving away, but aside from that, nothing else. Nothing major lately besides the usual substance abuse and internet.
To clarify, something you've done in your waking life. Dreams are your subconscious mind delivering messages to your conscious mind. Usually pertains to something that the conscious mind is somehow missing or misunderstanding.
How do you know this? What if dreams have another purpose, and it's your mind going between realities? What if that's what NPCs are? They're mentally checked out and have the brain of a dreamer from a non-NPC from another universe. Anyway, the thing is, I don't feel guilty about anything. I moved, got a job after being unemployed for a year. I'm working, supporting myself, trying to be healthier and get control of my life. I haven't done serious drugs in 2 months. I'm not drinking much. My life is generally improving, and I am way less depressed than I was this time last year. It wouldn't make sense that I would be having dreams over something I felt guilty for. At least, nothing recent.
The short answer is, I believe there is a mystical, metaphysical component to dreams, but that kind of dreaming is rare. Even someone who's very in tune with spiritual realms might have that sort of dream only once every year or two. If you consider the trial dream with the earlier dream of killing the kid, it could be that the first dream represented you killing the younger version of you that lived with, depended on, and supported your parents. Perhaps you feel some lingering guilt or regret over your choice to move out and be your own independent person. However, the fact that you didn't receive a verdict could also mean that the jury's still out on this decision, so to speak. You feel guilt, but also understand that this is necessary and important for your own development. Just a thought.
It's not about being an independent person. I'm in my early 30s. I moved out when I was 18 and went to college in another city. It's just that about 5 years after I graduated college, my parent had this debilitating illness. I feel bad for moving away from my parents due to my parents' minor disabilities and mental impairment, not guilt over me being independent necessarily. I didn't receive a verdict in the dream because I simply woke up before the trial happened. It's not like they were delaying. The trial itself had not even happened yet in the dream. I just knew the crime I was being accused of, knew the punishment, 30 years, and knew that I would be convicted because I did absolutely nothing to cover my tracks due to dumb dream logic. It was basically a foregone conclusion I would be convicted. I had the feeling that my life was over. It was very strange. I'm not a violent person in real life, and I've never been to jail or even come close to being convicted of a serious crime beyond traffic violations. But the feeling I felt is exactly what I imagine it would be like if I knew that I'd basically spend the rest of my life in jail. It was just an intense sense of dread mixed with regret.
I wouldn't be so dismissive of this. The subconscious, I have found, has a surprisingly good sense of timing, even incorporating physical stimuli into dreams in real time. Regarding the specific meaning of your dream, OP, I'm only offering some theories here to help you get clarity on your own, and provide a framework for understanding dreams in general. You're in a better position than anyone to think through the symbols and narrative of your dream and arrive at a meaning, which you're doing here.
Fair enough. It just feels like there's a whole world and life going on in my dreams when I'm not there. Like the dream I'm talking about here, even outside the symbolic meanings. I had the dream where I remember beating this kid or whatever, but then the dream last night seemed to take place weeks or months later in that dream environment. But it felt like time had passed continuously there, like a whole world was happening, and my consciousness just popped in there to experience it for a few hours. Maybe I'm not making sense when I say this. I appreciate the suggestions at dream interpretation, but I wonder what anons think about dreams themselves beyond the standard "it's just your subconscious regurgitating stuff" meme. Even though, yes, it sometimes is the subconscious, it just seems to me like there are different kinds of dreams, and some of them maybe travel to different parallel universes.
All right, /X/hear me out, and see if you can explain this to me. I tend to have some very trippy dreams where I visit places and they feel somewhat familiar but of a very weird construct, sometimes bizarre or alien. I tend to feel very at ease in these places though. Sometimes it feels like I'm aware of the dream, and sometimes it even feels like I'm in control of where I'm traveling to. However, this night, something very freaky happened, going on my own in the dream of the weirdness as it may be. I suddenly heard a voice and felt a very strong presence. It said to me, "Your family," in sort of Italian. This was something was there and sort of pulled me out of the dreamscape. I felt my whole reverberating strongly as everything became cloudy. It was sort of like I was having radio interference or feeling like there was some actual threat nearby. I know very well how sleep paralysis feels, and I am usually able to just sleep it off or wake at command. This was different. I felt very threatened or alerted, so I just decided to knock it off and wake up. Anyone experience this sort of thing around here? Can you tell if it was just a lucid dream or astral projection? How could I know? What about that interruption? What could it be? Was it a message or some entity?
All dreams are astral projections. Your normal waking reality is also just a dream. You only think your current perception is real life because you are almost 100% attuned to this dream, so it seems like the main event and very real. When you sleep, you tune in into other realities, other dreams. You are astrally traveling, but keep in mind that whole astral worlds can be created by your mind during the time you sleep and dream. They exist on the astral as real as anything else, but only as long as you create them. When you wake up, they are gone. This is lucid dreaming, but they are still worlds in other dimensions. Well, maybe they still exist in that moment in time, in the past, that your mind has created them, but that's a different story. You must think for yourself if it was a message from some entity, or if it was just creation of your mind. It is very hard to tell if you have been to a proper astral world with proper astral beings, or if all of this was just a creation, but usually travel to already existing stable astral worlds and contact with already existing. Stable spirit beings is much more vivid and remembered much easier than dreams of your own creation.
Well, maybe these worlds were my own creation, given the familiarity I felt with them. But that interference felt very real. It was very abrupt. And I even asked back, who is there? Is something like that possible to happen? If so, is it an actual contact?
Yes and yes. I had dreams too a couple of times that were unlike normal dreams. They left a big impact. Dreams where I am sure I made actual contact with actual spirits. I didn't have your experience, so I can't tell, but if you think it was special, then it probably was special. When you are extremely relaxed from sleeping, you can pick out voices and noises from the astral. Maybe you heard someone from the astral talking to you, or maybe it was just a random noise floating around. It was real either way.
Thanks, friend. One last bump if anyone else experienced something like this. One hint, though. This last year I had lucid dreams with a much higher frequency. I think it has to do with sleep equality. And at some point in the last year I met a dentist who recommended me an apparatus to stop me from grinding my teeth while sleeping. I really think this improved my deep sleep phase by a lot. With one point of me feeling more rested when I wake up, more energy, and another point to a much higher frequency of surreal or lucid dreams.
Last night I had a really vivid dream. It started out where I was on the top of this really archaic structure. It's kind of crumbled and obviously extremely old. The landscape around me is really hilly and green, but foggy at the same time. The entire place seems like there's light radiating from in between the hills, like cracks in the surface. Anyway, I look out on the dreamscape a good 10 or so feet from the edge. The fortress just drops off like a cliff. Then this man in a white robe comes up from behind me and says something like, "Do you know why you are here?" I say no, softly, still kind of dazed actually. It almost felt like the intensity of the glow coming from this place is having an effect on me. But anyways, I say no, and the guy, he seems pretty old, just grunts. After about 15 seconds of silence, I start to notice that a noise is building. It's a pulse, barely there, but still has that whoom 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 to it. It gets louder and louder. Just as I'm about to ask what it is, this huge bird-like thing swoops up in front of us, right up past the drop-off. This thing, its wingspan has to be half the length of the castle platform. The bird is also a radiant white color, except for its eyes. Its eyes are black. They don't look like eyeballs, just black patches. Anyway, this bird creature flies around above us before swooping down from behind. At this point, the old guy whips his arm through his white cloak and lets this projectile fly, hitting the bird in the chest region and pinning it to the stone wall in the center of the structure. It lets out a shriek, before just slumping, held up by this weapon. The man tells me to look upon it, and then he hands me this weird object. It's a sort of cone shape, metal, and it has some red jewels in it. It's got a few holes on the sides, and I just look at it, wondering what it is. The old man then says to me, "You're the anchor, you must bring them together." Anyone have a similar dream?
OP, have you ever had a dream involving you and a small team of people invading the realm of a hostile presence by disguising yourself as a spirit that belonged in that realm? But right before succeeding in their task, the team of disguised invaders is caught red-handed in the master's vault, invoking the wrath of the realm's master, who symbolically tears out the eyes of each invader. If none of this makes sense to you, then disregard.
Okay, this is kinda creepy, but I had a similar dream today. I started on a cliff looking down at the tower. But in my version, it was surrounded by black sand, so I went down and got inside and heard a voice saying, "You managed to get in, but your mind will soon fail you." After that, I just saw a red light and a huge force coming from it, and began to feel weak and just collapsed. Then I woke up, and nose was bleeding.
I had a crazy dream where I ended up inside an archaic building made of rocks as well. I trapped myself in there. The room where I was felt very small, a bit like a corridor. I could see the sky outside was light purple, like in some cloudy mornings. The wind swept the clouds very fast. A song started playing. I usually compose in my dreams, so yeah. It was a bunch of ghostly, haunting vocals singing in falsetto and some guitars so drenched in reverb they sounded like violins. Suddenly, I started seeing several shots of a statue of Babylon mounting the beast. I'm not even that much into Thelema. It sat inside an even smaller room, probably at the top of the tower. I could still see the purple light and the clouds running around it. Sounds insane, right? My dreams are usually crazy as hell. I'm disturbed in my sleep, so I'm used to waking up in the middle of the night with my heart beating really fast and seeing stuff like shadows by the door or my room on fire.
I have had a similar dream, except I was on ground level, jumped a cliff into a river, and swam across to a congregation walking up a stone path into a series of caves. All of the members of the congregation were in red robes with hoods, but they made no effort to hide their faces. As well, each carried a torch. I followed the congregation up and through the mountain into a high fortress or temple. I asked one of the members where we were going, as they showed no hostile intentions towards me and my following. She answered, "We are taking you to the Queen." As we entered the destination chamber, the robed people silently filed into the room in 2 adjacent rows, filling the sides in rows of about 20 before starting the next row, leaving a path in the middle. There was a small raised platform in the front of the room, such as an altar and church congregation. There was no other furnishings, and the room was lit by the congregation torches. I was instructed to stand on the outer edge of the back left row after all the people entered the room. Then following the congregation came in the Queen. She had very disproportionately long legs which were bare, a long robe of red and embroidered with white fur and studded with purple stones. She wore a very regal crown of gold and had long curly hair. Her face resembled that of a hideous old woman, but gave off a radiance of beauty. She walked to the front of the room and turned toward me. She also carried an iron rod, where the top of it was embroidered with the same jewels and design of her crown, which she pointed in my direction. When she did, I felt terror, and the entire congregation turned towards me and made an approach. The feeling of terror grew, and I woke up. Related? I do not know if, and was hostile, but she didn't look happy.
So an earlier conversation about what inspires fear and how is definitely worth extending. It involves the distinction between the normal corporeal causes of fear, dangerous people, death, pain, etc., versus supernatural ideas, threats to the soul, the unknown, being crushed by supernatural evil, etc. One argument suggests that this relies entirely on belief, but let me counter with this, my own limited version of creepypasta. It's just a dream I had, but it was an especially disturbing dream for me. The dream was short. I was sleeping with my girlfriend at the time when I woke up. Now, one thing that was distinct and interesting about this dream is that the dreamscape was a perfect replica of reality. Most of the time when I dream, the landscape seems familiar while I'm dreaming, but has no relationship to the waking world. What I think is that my house, as an example, will look nothing like my house in real life. This dream was different. The house, my bedroom, were perfect mirror images. When I woke up and opened my eyes, it was the exact same room. So I've woken up in the dream and the room is dark, but there's this indirect blue light that bathes everything so I can still see. And I hear my girlfriend calling me from the kitchen. I start to get up, then I look over and see that she's still sleeping in the bed. And then her voice from the kitchen just starts laughing insanely. At that point, my cat appears and just goes nuts on me, launching this insane rabid attack. So I'm fighting off my now lunatic lethal cat. The voice of my girlfriend is cackling madly from the kitchen while she sleeps, and I can feel this presence, just this weight of evil that has no point, focus, or desires except a hatred of me, a desire to make me suffer, a supernatural loathing. And in the way dreams have, I could feel this, just saturating the room. Then I woke up. Now here's my point. That feeling of evil malice relates to nothing I've ever experienced in real life. What I felt there was unique, but came, depending on your interpretation of reality, either from an external supernatural force infecting my dreams, or from my own psyche. Either way, it created an experience that was far scarier than anything else I've ever in my life encountered, and I've been put in a coma and left for dead. So whether we believe in the supernatural or not, our mind allows us, via the kind of dreams where we can be convinced the impossible is real, to experience supernatural fear. In my experience, it was a fear unlike the real world has ever been able to provide.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.